On a quiet movie set, Sandra Bullock asks Keanu Reeves to pretend you know me, hoping to turn two strangers into believable soulmates on screen. As they rehearse, the line blurs between acting and reality, and a gentle, unspoken bond grows behind the camera. In learning to fake a shared past, they accidentally create a real connection neither of them expected. Let me take you back to a movie set where the cameras weren't the only things trying to see the truth. Picture two people who barely know each other, asked to act like they've already lived a lifetime together. Sandra Bullock stood under the hot lights, the edge of the soundstage glowing around her like a halo she didn't feel she deserved. This film was supposed to be her second chance, the one that proved the whispers wrong. The whispers that said she was getting older, that her time as a leading woman was fading, that someone younger, louder, shinier would take her place. She rubbed her hands together, more from nerves than from cold, and watched the man walking toward her across the set. Keanu Reeves, dressed in a black jacket, quiet eyes taking everything in and giving almost nothing away. He looked calm, almost distant, the way a lake looks smooth even when there's a storm underneath it. The crew moved around them in a blur, lighting techs calling out numbers, grips rolling cables, a makeup artist hovering with powder just out of frame. The director, a sharp-eyed man named Victor, clapped his hands once. "Places, we're starting with the reunion scene," he barked. "You two have known each other for years. I want history. I want regret. I want everything." Sandra and Keanu took their marks, standing inches apart in the soft blue light. In the script, their characters had once been in love, torn apart by danger, now thrown back together on the eve of an impossible mission. In reality, they had met properly less than an hour ago in a conference room that smelled like cold coffee and fresh contracts. Dee offered a shy smile. She'd cracked a joke to break the ice. And then they were being pulled into costume fittings and stunt briefings before they could even remember each other's middle names. "Action," Victor shouted. Sandra lifted her eyes to Keanu, searching for something to hold on to. His face was kind but closed, like a door that hadn't decided yet whether it wanted to open. Her first line stuck in her throat. For half a second, all she could hear was the high, sharp buzz of the stage lights and the pounding of her own heartbeat in her ears. She forced the words out, but they sounded thin, practiced, like she was reading them off a wall. Keanu answered his line in the same flat register. The scene, this big emotional reunion that the studio kept calling the heart of the movie, landed with the weight of a paper airplane. "Cut," Victor groaned. He pinched the bridge of his nose. "I'm not feeling it. You two look like polite strangers in an elevator. Again." Polite strangers. The words stung more than they should have. Sandra had built a career on making strangers fall in love with her in 2 hours or less. But lately, people had started to say she was repeating herself, that her charm was wearing thin. She felt the old fear sliding up her spine. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't have it anymore. Victor stalked away to check playback. The crew repositioned a light, someone coughed. A PA scurried across set with a clipboard. For a moment, the chaos blurred, and it was just the two of them standing on their marks, breathing the same nervous air. Sandra leaned in, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Pretend you know me," she softly told Keanu Reeves. "Like we've already survived all the bad days together. Just fake it. I'll fake it too." He studied her, really studied her this time. There was no joke in her eyes now, no easy smile, just a raw, almost childlike plea not to be left alone in the moment. Something in his expression shifted, the distance cracking at the edges. He nodded once. "Okay," he said quietly, "let's pretend." They reset. Victor called for action again. But before Sandra spoke her first scripted line, Keanu did something that wasn't in the script at all. He took a tiny step closer and looked at her with a warmth that hadn't been there before, as if he were searching in her face for memories only he could see. "You cut your hair," he said softly, improvising, voice barely above a whisper. The line hit her like a wave. He was giving her a past, a shared moment that never happened but suddenly felt real. She could almost see it, the version of them who had once laughed in some kitchen over a badly cut fringe. Her chest tightened, and this time when she answered, her voice came out rough and honest. "You still notice," she replied, eyes stinging for reasons she couldn't quite name. Victor didn't yell cut. The crew went still, sensing something different. Sandra forgot the camera. She let herself believe just for this one scene that Keanu really did know her. The late-night doubts, the years of hustling, the fear of becoming a name that lived only in reruns. And without planning it, she let some of that real fear leak into the character, into the way she held her shoulders, into the way her voice trembled on the next line. Keanu followed her down that path. He added small details, tiny invented memories, a broken-down car on the side of a highway, a promise made in a cheap motel room, a joke only they would find funny. They were building a history together in front of an audience of lights and lenses, and for the first time that day, the room felt quiet, reverent. When Victor finally shouted, "Cut!" his voice cracked a little, like he'd been holding his breath. "That," he said, pointing at them, "is what I'm talking about. Do that. Every time, don't you dare lose it." As the crew burst into relieved chatter, Sandra stepped back, her chest buzzing with adrenaline. The scene had worked. She could feel it in her bones. People were looking at them differently now, not like two names on a poster, but like a story that might actually matter. Across the stage, she caught a pair of producers watching them with narrowed eyes, heads close together in a low, measured conversation. She couldn't hear their words, but she knew that posture. Hollywood whispering again. Her stomach dipped. Keanu followed her gaze. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. There was something protective in the way he shifted his stance, just a fraction, like he was ready to put himself between her and whatever they were saying. "Don't mind them," he murmured. "They live in numbers and weekend box office. We live in moments like that one." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But she'd spent too many years knowing how quickly a moment could be edited, how easily it could disappear in a boardroom full of nervous executives. Still, his quiet certainty sank into her like an anchor. For the first time all week, the floor felt a little steadier beneath her feet. "Actors to the roof," someone called. "Stunt rehearsal in 10. Sandra's heart tripped. The rooftop sequence. She'd read it in the script a dozen times. A high-speed chase, a running leap between buildings, a tangle of gunfire and shattered glass before they rolled to safety on the other side. On paper, it was exciting. On the call sheet, it was labeled medium risk. In her chest, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff she hadn't admitted she was afraid of. She told herself she couldn't afford fear. Not on this film. Not with whispers already circling her name like vultures. The stunt team had promised safety harnesses, wires, a controlled environment. She'd done stunts before. She knew the mechanics. But knowledge didn't always quiet the part of the brain that could imagine every way something might go wrong. On the elevator ride up to the roof, Keanu watched her reflection in the metal walls. She'd gone quiet, the jokes drying up. Her fingers were clasped together so tightly that her knuckles had turned pale. "First time doing a leap like this?" he asked gently. She forced a smile. "First time doing it with my career dangling off the other side." He huffed a soft laugh, but his eyes stayed serious. "You don't have to be a superhero up there," he said. "Just be human. Humans get scared. That's how we know we're not asleep." She shot him a sideways look. "You always talk like a fortune cookie, or is this a special occasion?" "Special occasion," he said. "This one comes with a safety harness." The doors opened to blinding sunlight and open sky. The rooftop was a maze of cables, padded mats, wind machines, and a skeletal framework of rails for the stunt wires. Far below, the city moved on, oblivious to the tiny human dramas playing out above its head. Sandra walked to the edge and looked across the gap to the other building. It wasn't as far as her imagination had made it, but it wasn't close either. The stunt coordinator, Maria, handed them both harnesses. "We tested the rig all morning," she said, tightening the straps around Sandra's waist. "You'll be clipped in the whole time. If anything feels wrong, you stop. Got it?" "Got it," Sandra said, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. Victor approached, sunglasses pushed up onto his head. "We're just doing a slow rehearsal first," he said. "Walk the run, feel the leap, let your bodies memorize it. Tomorrow we go full speed. Cameras will be everywhere. This is the big one, guys, the trailer moment." Trailer moment? She could already hear the voiceover. One leap can change everything. Maybe it could. Maybe this was the scene that would prove she still had the courage people used to praise her for. Maybe this was how she'd outrun the whispers. They practiced the approach a few times, running together, feet drumming on the rooftop, stopping just before the ledge. Maria adjusted their lines, measured distances, muttered to her team. On the third try, Keanu deliberately stumbled at the end, flailing his arms in an exaggerated, clumsy spin that almost knocked them both over. Sandra burst out laughing, the tension in her chest breaking like thin ice. "You trying to get us fired on day one?" she managed between laughs. "Just making sure you're awake," he said, grinning now, the earlier reserve melting away. "If we're going to pretend we've been through hell together, might as well start with a near-death rehearsal." "Near-death is scheduled for tomorrow," she shot back. "Didn't you read the call sheet?" They reset at the starting mark, still smiling. For a moment it almost felt fun, two kids on a playground, running toward the edge just to feel the rush of stopping in time. The crew's laughter drifted away as Victor raised his hand. "All right," he called. "One more run. Then we try a small jump with the wires taking your weight. Remember, this isn't about the stunt, it's about the trust. You're not just jumping for your lives, you're jumping for each other." Roll sound. The wind machines hummed to life. Sandra flexed her fingers. She thought of every time she'd told herself to be brave, every empty hotel room, every headline that had guessed who she really was and gotten it wrong. She could feel Keanu beside her, steady and solid, like a bridge between fear and action. "Ready?" he asked. "Pretend you know me," she said again, but this time there was a wry smile behind the words. "I do," he answered, and for a heartbeat she almost believed him. 3, 2, 1, go. They ran, the world narrowed to the rhythm of their footsteps, the rushing wind, the rising edge of the rooftop. At the last moment they pushed off together, a synchronized leap into open air. The harness caught them, the wires singing with tension, their bodies arcing over the gap in a smooth, controlled swing. They landed on the far side, stumbling but upright. Applause broke out behind them. Maria gave a thumbs up. Victor was already calling out notes for tomorrow, his voice bright with satisfaction. Sandra's knees trembled, but a fierce grin spread across her face. She'd done it. One small jump, but it felt like clearing a canyon. "See," Keanu said softly, "we survived the bad days." She wanted to answer, to make some light comment, but a stray gust of wind whipped across the rooftop, stronger than before. The wire above them shuddered. Sandra felt a tiny jerk at her waist, a hitch in the harness that didn't feel rehearsed at all. Maria's head snapped up. "Hold," she shouted. "Everybody hold." Before anyone could react, there was a sharp metallic crack, the sound of something important snapping where it shouldn't. The world tilted. Sandra felt the ground vanish beneath her feet as one side of her harness went slack. Her body pitched backward, gravity grabbing hold with cold, merciless fingers. For a split second, all she saw was sky and the dizzying drop of the city far below. Her mind went perfectly, terribly clear. She was falling. Air rushed past her ears, a roar that swallowed every other sound. The bright line of the rooftop spun away, replaced by the impossible open blue of the sky and the terrifying, glinting depth of the city below. For a heartbeat, Sandra felt weightless, her body no longer belonging to her, just a shape falling through space. The remaining line of her harness snapped tight across her ribs and wrenched her sideways. Her fall stopped, but the momentum swung her hard against the concrete edge. Pain exploded across her shoulder. She gasped, dangling over the drop, feet scraping uselessly at the smooth wall. "Sandra," Keanu's voice tore through the wind. He was already moving before anyone else did, legs pounding across the rooftop. Maria grabbed for the safety rope, but it had twisted in the sudden jerk, half-slipped through the emergency brake. Sandra felt it slide another inch. The world tilted again. Keanu didn't hesitate. He dove for the rope, catching it just as it started to slither over the side. The force of her weight yanked him forward, dragging him on his knees toward the ledge. Asphalt ripped the skin on his hands, but he held on, every muscle in his arms straining. "Get him anchored," Maria shouted. Two grips lunged in, grabbing Keanu's belt and shoulders, bracing themselves with their heels. Another crew member threw his weight onto the line, fingers wrapping around Keanu's as they formed a desperate human chain. The rope burned into their palms. No one let go. Sandra hung there, chest heaving, the world reduced to the cutting bite of the harness and the sight of Keanu's face above her. Jaw clenched, eyes locked on hers, as if pure focus could keep gravity from winning. "I've got you," he said, voice low but steady. "Look at me, don't look down." She did as he said. She clung to his gaze like it was another rope. The next seconds blurred in a rush of instructions and controlled chaos. Maria's team cranked a backup winch, slowly pulling Sandra up inch by inch. Every jolt sent a fresh rip of pain through her shoulder. Her arms trembled with the instinct to grab for something, anything, but she forced herself to stay still, knowing sudden movement could twist the line again. Finally, blessedly, hands reached over the edge and caught her under the arms, hauling her onto solid ground. Her knees hit the rooftop. The surface felt unreal, like it might disappear if she trusted it too quickly. Keanu dropped to his knees beside her, breathing hard, knuckles raw and bleeding where the rope had chewed through the skin. For a moment, no one said anything. The whole crew just stared, as if waiting to see if she would vanish again. Then Victor's voice came back to life, hoarse and shaken. "Cut, everyone, just cut. Medic." The paramedic team rushed in, checking her pupils, her pulse, her arm. Someone wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. The wind still whipped her hair into her face, but now she shivered for an entirely different reason. "I'm fine," she kept saying automatically. "I'm okay, I'm fine." "You're not fine," Maria said sharply, her own hands shaking. "You almost went over, we stop, that's it for today." Sandra wanted to argue, to laugh it off, to make some joke about getting her own stunt real the hard way. But when she tried to stand, her legs folded. Keanu's hand shot out, steadying her without a word. That small gesture, simple, unshowy, just there, hit her deeper than the near fall. Courage was one thing, quiet, instinctive kindness was another. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement near the monitors. The two producers she'd noticed earlier were already on their phones, voices low and urgent, eyes flicking toward her and then away again, as if she were simultaneously a liability and a headline. The medic insisted on taking her to the on-site clinic. Keanu started to follow, but Victor caught his arm. "I need you for a second," the director said softly. "We have to talk about all of this." Keanu hesitated, looking from Victor to Sandra. She managed a faint smile. "Go," she said. "I'm not going to fall through the floor." His brow furrowed, but he nodded. "I'll check on you," he promised. The clinic was a small, sterile room tucked behind the soundstage, smelling faintly of antiseptic and coffee. The doctor examined her shoulder, bruised, strained, but thankfully not broken. No concussion, no fractures. Physically, she would be fine in a few days. But when he asked how she really felt, the answer tangled in her throat. "I'm embarrassed," she admitted at last, surprising herself. "I'm supposed to be the professional, and I almost took everyone's movie over the edge with me." The doctor gave her a gentle, tired smile. "You're supposed to be human," he said, "and humans are heavier than egos, that's why gravity prefers us." She laughed once, a short, startled sound. It eased some of the pressure in her chest. By the time she stepped out of the clinic, the sun was lower in the sky. The set had quieted, the earlier energy replaced by a subdued, careful mood. A few crew members glanced at her, then quickly looked away, like people passing a car that almost crashed. Keanu waited by the door, hands bandaged, jacket slung over one arm. He straightened when he saw her. "They let you out," he said. "Good, I was about to break in." "How are your hands?" she asked. He shrugged, opening one palm so she could see the red, angry lines under the gauze. "I've had worse from bad guitar practice," he said. "I'll live." "Thank you," she said, and the words felt too small. "For not letting me, you know." He looked at her for a long moment. "I didn't even think about it," he said quietly. "I just moved. That's what you do when a friend is falling." The word friend surprised her. They'd only known each other a few days, but something about almost dying together moved relationships onto a faster track. "I'm sorry," she blurted out, the shame finally spilling over. I slowed us down. They're probably already calculating how much this cost the schedule. His expression softened, but there was a shadow in his eyes now, something darker than concern. They can count money, he said. We count people. You being alive is non-negotiable. That night in her hotel room, the silence felt heavier than usual. She tried to distract herself with scripts and emails, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw that blue sky flipping upside down, the jagged line of the building dropping away. Her phone buzzed. It was her agent. I saw the production report, he said without preamble. How bad is it? I'm okay, she said, a little bruised, shaken. He exhaled audibly. Good, because the studio's already nervous. Insurance is on the line, and the producers are talking about limiting your stunts. Maybe using a double for anything more complicated than walking and chewing gum. She swallowed, so they think I'm a risk now. They think the movie is a risk, he corrected. You're just the part they can move around on a spreadsheet. Listen, don't fight them on the stunt double thing. Pick your battles. She stared at her reflection in the dark window, city lights scattered behind her like a different sky. If I give them the stunts, she said slowly, what do I have left? There was a pause on the line. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. You have everything a stunt double doesn't. You have the face, the heart, the history. Don't forget that. After the call, she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, the room quiet except for the muffled sounds of distant traffic. She wasn't sure which scared her more now, the memory of falling or the thought of becoming replaceable. The next morning, she went back to set early, before the official call time, needing to see the rooftop in daylight without wind machines and manufactured chaos. The rigging team was already there, clustered around the harness system with serious faces. Maria stood over a section of cable laid out on a table. Part of it was frayed, fibers split and dirty. But one section near the metal clasp was too clean, too sharp. The ends weren't worn, they were sliced. This isn't normal wear, she was saying to a safety inspector. Something cut through it. This doesn't just happen. A cold prickling started at the back of Sandra's neck. The inspector frowned, running a finger along the edge. You're sure no one swapped this line after testing? Positive, Maria said. Her voice shook with anger now, not fear. I signed off on it myself. Somebody did this between the test and the run. Any cameras up here? The inspector asked. Security's already pulling footage, Maria said. The producers don't want this getting out. They're terrified of the headlines. Sandra's heartbeat picked up. She took a step closer, but before she could speak, movement at the far end of the rooftop caught her eye. One of the producers, the same one who'd been whispering during yesterday's scene, stood near the stairwell, clutching a phone. He glanced toward the table, then toward her. Their eyes met for a second. His expression flickered, surprise, then something she couldn't name. He turned away quickly, lowering his head, already walking in the opposite direction. The sliced cable lay on the table between them, silent proof that her fall might not have been an accident at all. And as the morning sun climbed higher, warming the concrete under her feet, Sandra felt a different kind of chill spread through her. Someone had wanted that line to fail. And she had no idea who or why. The days that followed felt like walking through a movie where the soundtrack had been turned down and the tension turned up. Nothing looked different on the surface. Trailers, call sheets, rolling cameras. But underneath, everyone moved a little more carefully, spoke a little more quietly, watched a little more closely. Officially, the production called it a mechanical failure under investigation. Unofficially, whispers moved faster than any memo. Someone had cut the line, someone with access, someone who knew what they were doing. Sandra found herself scanning faces she'd trusted without thinking just a week earlier. The grip who always joked about coffee. The PA who ran to fetch her jacket when the stage got cold. The camera operator who'd shown her pictures of his kids. It felt wrong, even cruel, to let suspicion slide over them like a shadow they hadn't earned, but fear didn't care about fairness. Maria took it personally. She marched around the set with new checklists, double-checking every anchor, every clip, every wire. No more rooftop stunts until we know exactly what happened, she declared. If they don't like it, they can fire me. No one fired her. For all their quiet panic, the producers knew they couldn't afford another near miss. The studio sent in an executive from Lowe's Angels to support and supervise the situation, which everyone understood meant control the damage. Her name was Elena Cruz, a woman with smooth, unreadable eyes and a perfectly ironed blazer that never seemed to wrinkle, no matter how long the day ran. She arrived with a small entourage and a smile that looked professional, not warm. "I'm here to make sure we finish this film," she told the gathered department heads, "and to make sure we all get to go home safely when we do." The words were right, the tone left a chill. In a cramped conference room that smelled like coffee and old carpet, Elena gathered Victor, the producers, Maria, Keanu, and Sandra for a closed-door meeting. A security guard waited outside, as if the danger might try to slip under the door. "We're investigating the incident," Elena began, tablet in hand. "Security has already found footage of an individual accessing the rooftop rigging area last night after hours. Hooded, gloved, face obscured. They used a valid access card that hasn't been matched yet. We're working on it." "Someone on our crew?" Victor asked, disbelief sharpening his voice. "Why would they do that?" "Angry ex-employee, protest against stunts, someone paid off by a competitor," one of the producers said. "Pick a theory." "I don't care about theories," Maria cut in. "I care that one of my actors almost died because somebody wanted to make a point." Elena held up a hand. "And that's exactly why we're tightening access. But we also have to think about the bigger picture. Insurance is nervous. Investors are nervous. If this leaks to the press before we control the narrative, we could lose the whole picture." "So what's the plan?" Keanu asked quietly. Elena turned to Sandra, and for the first time her gaze felt truly direct, not just managerial. "We reduce live-risk stunts. We use doubles wherever we can. We lean harder into the emotional core of the story. This film can live without you doing rooftop leaps. It cannot live without your performance." Sandra should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt strangely hollow, like someone had just told her they were cutting half her lines and calling it a promotion. "So I become smaller for everyone else's safety," she said slowly. Elena shook her head. "You become smarter. You let other departments do their jobs. Courage isn't about gambling your neck for a wide shot. It's about knowing when to step back." Keanu shifted in his chair. "She didn't gamble anything," he said, calm but firm. "She trusted the system to be safe. That's on us, not on her." The room went quiet. Elena studied him for a beat, then gave a small nod. "Point taken," she said. "Nobody here is blaming Sandra. We're just adjusting course." After the meeting, as the others filed out, Elena stopped Sandra with a light touch on her arm. "For what it's worth," Elena said, voice softer now, "I watched your early footage. You're the reason this movie works. Don't let this scare you off finishing what you started." The compliment landed strangely. Genuine, maybe. Strategic, definitely. This was a woman who understood leverage, both emotional and financial. "Are you going to tell the press someone cut the line?" Sandra asked. Elena's eyes flickered. "We'll tell them there was a rigging malfunction that's been corrected. Anything more specific opens doors we might not be able to close." "So we pretend," Sandra said. "Just enough truth to look honest, not enough to make anyone uncomfortable." "Welcome to show business," Elena said gently, then walked away. Outside on the soundstage, the world brightened into artificial sunlight. Today's work was an interior sequence. A quiet scene between their characters, post-mission, sharing the kind of conversation action movies rarely paused long enough to show. In the script, they sat in a safe house, patching up minor wounds, talking about fear. The rooftop accident had happened after the pages were written, but it now sat in every line like invisible ink. During rehearsal, Sandra struggled to keep the scene on the page and not in her chest. Her character was supposed to admit she wasn't fearless, that every jump, every fight, every impossible choice terrified her. A confession of vulnerability. A way to show the audience that bravery and fear could live in the same heartbeat. The words didn't feel like acting anymore. Let it, Victor told her quietly after the second run. Don't fight the overlap, use it. The camera loves the truth, even when we dress it in fiction. When they rolled again, she stopped trying to separate herself from the character. She let the memory of the fall seep into her voice, the shame of almost ruining everything, the anger at whoever had turned a movie set into a trap. I'm not who they think I am, she said, eyes locked on Keanu's. They all look at me like I'm unbreakable, like I can fall from any height and land on my feet, but I'm just a person trying very hard not to shatter. Keanu's reply wasn't exactly what was on the page. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely. Good, he said softly, because I don't need unbreakable, I need real. I need someone who knows what it costs to stand up again. A hush fell over the set. The words were for the characters, but everyone knew they were also for the two people saying them. Between takes, the tension eased a little. Keanu started telling stories about his earliest roles, ridiculous costumes, awkward auditions, a fight choreography that ended with him accidentally punching himself in the face. He reenacted the moment with such deadpan seriousness that the crew burst out laughing. You did not knock yourself out, Sandra said, wiping at tears of laughter. I did, he insisted. They have it on film somewhere. The stunt coordinator still brings it up at parties. The laughter didn't erase what had happened, but it widened the space around it. For a few minutes at a time, fear stopped being the only thing in the room. Later that afternoon, security called another meeting. They had matched the access card used by the hooded figure on the rooftop. It belongs to Diego Herrera, the head of security said. Key grip, been with the production since pre-lighting. He claims he lost the card a week ago and reported it, but there's no record of that in our system. Sandra knew Diego. He was the one who always had a spare phone charger in his pocket, who called everyone boss in a friendly, teasing way. When they'd been introduced, he'd shyly asked her to sign a behind-the-scenes photo for his daughter. Now he stood at the edge of the group, face pale, hands trembling. I swear, he said, voice cracking. I didn't do this, I'd never, why would I? My kids watch her movies, why would I hurt her? Elena's expression stayed neutral. The footage shows your card, she said. Until we know more, we have to suspend you. Security will escort you off the lot. He looked around, eyes wide, searching for someone to step in to say something to believe him. Most people looked down. A few shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. Sandra's throat tightened. She thought of the sliced cable, the fall, the cold spiral of terror. She also thought of the way Diego had lit up when he'd talked about his daughter's school play. This isn't right, Maria muttered, but even she sounded uncertain. As Diego was led away, he passed close enough to Sandra that he could lean in without the guards hearing. They like blaming people like me, he whispered, desperate. We're replaceable, cheap, easier to point at us than look up there. He jerked his chin subtly toward the offices where the producers worked. Be careful, Ms. Bullock. The scissors are never in the hand they show you. Then he was gone, swallowed by a doorway and a guard in a dark jacket. Sandra stood frozen, his words echoing in her chest. Somewhere in the maze of money, ego, and image control that wrapped around this film, someone was lying. Maybe it was Diego. Maybe it was someone who would never be escorted anywhere but a private jet. She felt a hand touch her elbow. Keanu again, quiet at her side. You okay? He asked. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know who to trust. He hesitated, then said, Start small. Trust the ones who were on the rope with you. His eyes held hers, steady and kind and tired. She remembered his bleeding hands, the grip on the line, the weight of his promise. I've got you. It wasn't enough to solve anything, but it was something. Still, as she walked back to her trailer, Diego's warning clung to her like smoke. If the scissors weren't in the hand, they were showing her. Then where were they? And who was really deciding how close she came to the edge? The editing room was dark and cool, lit only by the soft glow of multiple monitors. Sandra sat alone in the back row, arms folded, watching herself on screen as the rooftop rehearsal played in slow motion. There she was, running across the roof, laughing at something Keanu had just said, muscles coiled with fake adrenaline and very real energy. There was the leap, captured from a training camera, her body arcing cleanly through space. The harness held. The landing was solid. No drama, no chaos, just craft. The accident itself hadn't been recorded from the cinematic angles. The safety cameras had caught it, yes, but those files were locked away in a secure folder she hadn't asked to see. She didn't need to. The memory lived in her bones now. As she watched the rehearsal again, something shifted in her perspective. She saw less of the stunt and more of the story underneath. Two people running side by side, trusting the gear, trusting each other, stepping into nothing and believing, truly believing, that something would catch them. Fear wasn't the enemy. It was the proof that what you were doing mattered. She found Victor in his office, hunched over a storyboard, red pencil in hand. The walls were lined with concept art, explosions, chases, heroic silhouettes against impossible backdrops. The kind of images studios love to put in trailers. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. "For you," he said. "Always." He set down the pencil, rubbing his eyes. "What's up?" She took a breath. "I've been thinking about the rooftop scene, the big one, the final leap." His posture tensed automatically. "We're not doing it live again. That's not negotiable." "I know," she said quickly. "I don't want to, but I also don't want to pretend it's nothing. Something real happened up there, and then everyone tried to pack it in a box and hide it." Victor watched her, saying nothing. "What if," she continued, "we stop trying to sell these two as fearless action figures? What if the leap is about being afraid and doing it anyway? What if she admits she's broken and he doesn't try to fix her, he just chooses to jump broken too?" Victor leaned back in his chair, eyes moving slowly over the storyboards. Explosions and perfect landings suddenly looked flatter than they had yesterday. "You're talking about rewriting the spine of the movie," he said. "I'm talking about telling the truth," she said. "Or at least a truth. We have something now most films fake. Real fear, real consequences. We can either bury it or we can use it." He was quiet for a long moment. Then a strange, reluctant smile tugged at his mouth. "You know, when I pitched this thing, I told the studio it was an action movie with a soul," he said. "They nodded and smiled and asked how many cars we were going to flip. Maybe it's time to remind them what they bought." "So," she asked. "So we rewrite," he said. "We shift weight from spectacle to character, less jumping off roofs, more jumping into honesty. But we need the studio to sign off." "Elena," she said. "Elena," he confirmed with a grim little nod. The meeting with Elena was tense but focused. Victor laid out the new approach. Use safer technology for the visuals, build the climax around emotional risk rather than physical, weave the themes of fear and resilience directly into the big set piece. Elena listened without interrupting, fingertips pressed together, expression thoughtful. "From a safety and budget perspective," she said at last, "I love fewer practical stunts. From a marketing perspective, I need to know if this still looks like the movie we sold." "It looks better," Victor said. "It looks like people will actually care if these two live or die." Elena's gaze slid to Sandra. "What do you think?" she asked. Sandra hesitated. This was her chance to shape not just a character, but the way millions of strangers might think about courage. "I think," she said carefully, "we're all tired of pretending the people on screen are made of steel. We live in a world where everything looks polished and fearless, and everybody watching feels like they're failing because they're scared. If we show heroes who are afraid and keep going anyway, that might actually help someone." Elena held her eyes for a long beat, then gave a slow nod. "All right," she said. "We try it your way. We'll build the climax around this honest leap." She glanced at her tablet as it buzzed, then back up. "But if test audiences don't respond, we may have to cut it more like a traditional trailer moment. Understand?" "Understood," Victor said. As they left the room, Elena called after them. "Oh, and about the accident, publicly we're sticking with equipment malfunction identified and corrected. No mention of sabotage. We don't want copycats or panic." "What about Diego?" Sandra asked. "Security is still investigating," Elena replied. Until we know more, that's all I can say. The LED stage looked like something out of a science fiction film. A curved wall of high-definition screens wrapped around a platform, able to display any environment they wanted. Today, it showed a hyperreal rooftop at golden hour, complete with drifting clouds and a distant skyline that would never know how safe this version was. Sandra stepped onto the platform, watching as the virtual city shifted subtly with her movement. No real drop, no wind gnawing at her balance, no hidden cables waiting to snap. Just pixels and careful programming. "Welcome to the future," Maria said, joining her with a tablet full of safety readouts. "You fall here, you hit foam. Worst case, you bruise your ego." Keanu walked in, looking around with boyish curiosity. "This is wild," he said. "I did my first action movie on a set like this, except the city was painted on a canvas and the wind was a guy with a big fan." "Progress," Sandra said wryly. "Now the fan has a computer science degree." They strapped into harnesses again, but these were lighter, built more for subtle balance support than death-defying drops. Cables went up into a rig above the LED screens, controlled by a team of techs with joystick-like consoles. The stunt today wasn't a long jump. It was a small step off a ledge onto a hidden platform, with the background doing most of the visual work. The real drama would be in their faces, their voices, their decision to move at all. As they rehearsed the blocking, Sandra felt the familiar tightening in her chest, even knowing the ground was barely a foot below. Her body didn't care about logic. It remembered falling. At one point, as she stood at the virtual edge, knees locked, breath shallow, her vision narrowed. The lead city swam. Her fingers tingled. The hum of the stage grew loud, then distant, like it was underwater. She didn't realize she'd sunk into a crouch until Keanu was in front of her, down at her level, blocking her view of the fake drop with his body. "Hey," he said gently, "look at me." She tried. Her gaze kept flicking past his shoulder to the endless pixels of sky. "Breathe with me," he said, voice low and even. "In and out, no rush, we're not rolling, nobody is waiting, it's just us." She mirrored his breaths, shaky at first, then steadier. "You know what terrified me once?" he said quietly. "First big movie I did, they put me on a horse. I'd never been on a horse. I thought I was going to die in the least cool way possible. Not in a car chase, not in a gunfight, falling off a bored animal named Daisy." Despite herself, she huffed a weak laugh. "Daisy." "She hated me," he said solemnly. "Couldn't get near her without her rolling her eyes. But the Wrangler told me, don't pretend you're not scared. Daisy can smell lies. Admit it, then get on anyway." Best advice I ever got. He tilted his head. "You don't have to pretend you're unbreakable, Sandra. Just let them see you trying, that's enough." The panic didn't vanish in a magic puff, but it loosened like a muscle unclenching. Her heart slowed from a sprint to a fast walk. "Okay," she whispered, "let's try again." When they rolled cameras, the set went perfectly still. The lead sunset painted warm light across their faces. The script called for her character to stand at the edge, admit her terror, and then step forward because the person beside her mattered more than her fear. This time, the terror felt like a partner, not an enemy. It sharpened her focus, made every breath count. "I can't do this," she said in character, voice trembling. "I don't know how to be brave anymore." "Yes, you do," Keanu's character replied softly. "You remember that bravery isn't the jump, it's the decision to lift your foot." He extended his hand, not dragging, not pulling, just offering. "In 3 years," he said, "no one will remember how far we jumped. They'll only remember who we jumped for." Sandra let the words sink in. She thought of audiences sitting in dark theaters, tired from their own battles, wondering if they still had any courage left. She thought of the people who had grabbed the rope for her. She thought of Diego, walking off the lot with security at his sides. She thought of Alina, juggling risk and image like burning knives. She stepped forward. Her foot found the solid platform, hidden just below the frame. The harness took a hint of her weight, then settled, safe, grounded, real. Tears blurred her vision, unplanned but true. She didn't wipe them away. "Cut," Victor whispered, almost reverent. He turned to the crew. Again, same honesty, same everything. Just give me a little more room on that last beat. That was it. They did it several more times, each take carving the emotion deeper, not thinner. When they finally stopped, the crew didn't cheer. They just breathed out, like they'd all been holding something in. Alina appeared at the edge of the set, phone in hand, face unusually unreadable. She spoke quietly to Victor, showing him something on the screen. His shoulders sagged just a fraction. He crossed the stage toward Sandra and Keanu, absently stepping over cables, eyes distant. "What is it?" Sandra asked, dread already curling in her stomach. Victor swallowed, looking at them with a mixture of pride and regret. "The studio just called," he said. "They saw the dailies, they love what we're doing here, they think the emotion is, quote, prestige level." "That sounds good," Keanu said cautiously. "What's the problem?" Victor exhaled slowly. "They want to make a change, a big one. They think the movie might be more impactful if—" He hesitated, hating the words before he said them. "If one of you doesn't make the final leap, they want a sacrifice, a death, something to turn this into awards talk." The rooftop city still glowed around them, soft and golden, as if nothing had shifted at all. But in the space between Victor's sentence and what came next, Sandra felt the ground under this entire film tilt again, this time in a way no harness could stop.